Welcome to the Climate Hour. I'm your host, Bob Grove. Tonight, we're going to talk about urban farming. Food is a pretty important part of life, and the history of the world seems to be defined by its farming systems. Before the Industrial Revolution, people grew their own food. And after that, we had to develop chemical farming and commercial and transport options that would take food into the cities. The next big shift in farming was after World War II, when the war industry discovered that they could repurpose their explosives into fertilizer. And that's when we invented chemical farming. Instead of rotating crops, we can now grow the same crop on the same field over and over again by spraying everything with chemicals. What we didn't understand was how this was destroying the soil, how it was depleting the food's micronutrients, and also polluting our water systems. Today, we have a food system that lacks basic nutrition. We have a transport system that moves food around the world, creating an enormous carbon load that is a leading contributor to climate change. The EPA reports that agriculture is responsible for 24% of global greenhouse gas emissions. That's just 1% behind global power production. And that's 10% more than the global transportation industry. So that's a lot. We now live in a world of expensive, unnutritious monocrops, often genetically modified to require the chemicals that have destroyed their nutritional value, often irradiated or otherwise treated to keep them from rotting on their long journey around the world from farm to grocery store. So what's the solution? Increasingly, people are turning to urban farming to once again grow their own food in an effort to save money and provide a nutritious alternative to today's commercial food systems. We're joined on Zoom tonight by Mark Gawron with Cultivate KC. Hi, Mark.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Mike Rollen with Ophelia's Blue Vine Farm. That's correct. Hi, Mark.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Stan Slaughter, Missouri Organic Recycling. Hi, Stan.
Hi, Bob.
And Jennifer Fink, Kansas City Community Gardens. Hi, Jennifer.
Hi, Bob. Delighted to be here.
Well, welcome. Mark, Cultivate KC began in 2005 as the Kansas City Center for Urban Agriculture. I think your stated goal back then was something about growing food in city neighborhoods to feed other people. And I think that's a great goal. Can you give us kind of an overview of Cultivate KC's last 15 years? You know, how has urban farming helped change the landscape?
Yeah, sure. So yes, began, as you said, in 2005, and with that goal of just promoting urban agriculture, kind of Catherine Kelly, who was our founder, had come in and was an organic farmer in the city and saw, sort of a burgeoning system, like was with, not of a well-developed local food scene at that time, and really started to grow it and nurture that. And what Cultivate has grown into is running a series of different programs. You may have known us at the Gibbs Road farm for many years. And currently we have moved, and our main farm is at the Westport Commons farm, which is a just under 2-acre field attached to the Plexpod building there, which was the old Westport Middle School. And so out of that, we do run an urban farm example of that site, but as well as our current programs, we're looking at food access to hopefully support a just and sustainable food system for all. So through that, in partnership with Mark, the Mid-America Regional Council, we have a Double Up Food Bucks program, as well as a senior farmers market nutrition program, as well as we will supply a certain amount of donated food off the Westport farm to a few different food pantries. Then it's in its 12th year, we have the New Roots for Refugees Training Farm, and this kind of goes into Cultivate's mission, which is not so much in the home gardener or the community garden realm that Kansas City Community Gardens may. We really focus on the business side and growing farm businesses that can then support themselves and support their residents, their neighborhoods in the city, more so than the community garden type platform. And so the New Roots for Refugees program is a partnership with Catholic Charities. And it's a 4-year training program with new settled refugees. So farmers will enter that program, they'll receive a 1/4 acre plot to learn and grow on and go to market, have restaurant sales and aggregated CSA program. And with the goal of at 4 years, we'll be able to graduate to their own farm, where we will then support them in land access and infrastructure build outs to move forward. And thus far, there's been 34 graduates from that program over the last 12 years, and 28 are still farming in Kansas City with current businesses and attending markets. And then on top of that is the program I run is called the Metro Farms and Food Systems program, and which is largely centered around technical assistance to our area farmers. And that could be in policy work, working with codes departments, working on urban ag codes. It could be in supplying resources in terms of, we have a mini grant program as well to hopefully have some, yearly small infrastructure improvements on farms, and much like, or just receiving phone calls, emails, answering questions about technical sides of farming.
So you're working with the professional farmer, the more the commercial urban farmers, but they're raising products to sell or otherwise distribute throughout the metro area.
Yes, that would be the main goal of the program I work with. Yeah.
Yeah, Mike, I mean, Ophelia's Blue Vine, I mean, that's a commercial farmer. Urban farming, yeah, but I mean, you're commercially selling your product. Did you start out as a home gardener? I mean, what got you into the urban farming?
Yeah, I did. I came to Kansas City and really fell in love with the city. I got into it by meeting someone named Dina Newman, who's now at UMKC, but she was at Ivanhoe Neighborhood Council. And they had a garden out there, and as part of their garden, they had master gardeners would come and they would teach inside the garden as that garden was first developed. And so a lot of my training was just starting off as a home gardener and growing some stuff. And they're like, "Oh, well, you're doing a really good job at it. So we have this market. Do you mind selling at it?" And so I did that, and we did that for like 7 years. And so my model was growing produce on different lots in the city. Some of them were donated, some of them I owned, and some of them were leased from places like Kansas City Community Gardens. You give them so much money over the season, and it includes all the water and all that. You have a little plot, and so that's what I did for a number of years. Ophelia's Blue Vine was a company I started, and it was a throwback to my grandmother who raised me. I spent the summers with her, and she grew up on a family farm in Arkansas. And so really she taught me a lot of stuff about farming, agriculture that I had forgotten. And when I got married and right around that time, I met Miss Newman. I really wanted my boys to know what real food tastes like: real tomatoes, real strawberries, real crab apples. And I wanted other people to have that experience. And so that's kind of how Ophelia's Blue Vine got started. And it's great because all the people you have on your panel in some capacity, have helped Ophelia's Blue Vine become what Ophelia's Blue Vine has become. And so that's a great thing, the knowledge and experience at Kansas City Community Gardens, and starting off with seeds and tools, and the same with Cultivate Kansas City with grants. A lot of people don't know that Ophelia's Blue Vine almost didn't happen because when I had brought land from the land bank 5 years ago to farm, and that land was contaminated. And so through various programs, I set out on a mission to rehabilitate that, to fix that soil. And through Missouri Organics and a lot of other people who were smarter than I was, with thousands of dollars for soil testing and compost, and we were able to fix that. And so my model just started with a piece of Brownsfield site, and was able to, and just a lot, and was able to turn that into, now we have a model where we have a 30 by 72 foot greenhouse that's heated with a pellet stove and can run all year round, and can grow food for the community all year round in the community. That food can stay in the community, so it doesn't have to travel. It gets set through our online store so people can purchase off the app, and we can have it DoorDash to them, or they can have it delivered. And so there's refrigeration there, but it really never has a very big footprint, you know. And so it's as fresh as I think fresh could be, and that's really what we wanted to. That's kind of the model we wanted to do.
So I noticed on your website you're selling primarily herbs.
Yeah, and we have other stuff growing at other locations. So we're doing some carrots and some collards and some, but the on Vine, on 24th and Vine, that building is strictly dedicated to culinary herbs.
That's cool. Jennifer, you know, Kansas City Community Gardens has been around since what, 1979, started out as a Lutheran ministry initiative to help save low-income families, you know, on their grocery bills, help them. And I believe today you support over 600 community gardens, 2,500 home gardens. You know, what resources do you have? How do you help a person become an urban farmer?
So as you mentioned, we started in 1979 with a really simple idea. A team of folks working over at Metropolitan Lutheran Ministries were handing out food pantry kind of set up, and said, you know, what if we gave people some vegetable seeds? Kansas City is very, very land rich. And we're unique among community garden organizations because we do support this big network of backyard gardeners. When you think community gardens, a lot of times you think about those group sites. But in Kansas City, a lot of community gardening takes place in backyards because here people have backyards. They have space to grow. So what started with those few vegetable packets has now grown into our big headquarters building out in Swope Park. We put out about 160,000 seedling transplants and about 50,000 packets of seeds into the community every year. And it's very easy to come out here and get started. All of our home gardener pricing is based on household income. So for low-income clients, it costs $2 a year to purchase a membership with us. That membership comes with a selection of 10 packs of seeds. You can buy additional seeds. Our low-income clients pay 20 cents a pack for those beyond their initial 10. So you get a great selection. You get very low-cost plants, garden supplies, mulch, straw, those kinds of things. Plus, you get all of our team that helps you know what to do with that once you get it home. In 2021, we've launched all of our workshops online. So we have about 40 free workshops a year that range from vegetable gardening 101, if you've never set foot in a garden, never tried to till up the earth before, to some more advanced topics once you're dealing with pests and diseases and looking at natural ways to take care of that. And then we also have workshops on what to do with your produce. If you've never grown in your backyard before, you may get this wonderful harvest and not really know what to do with it. So we kind of run the whole gamut for home gardeners. We also, through our home gardening program, have 9 large rental plot gardens here in town that we operate. 7 of those are in Kansas City, Missouri. We've added 2 in Kansas City, Kansas, because we know that not every backyard is ideal for gardening. If you've got a shady backyard, if you're in an apartment, if you just don't have the space, we do offer fairly large size rental plots. They're 20 by 25, so you can grow a lot of food for a family in that space. We also have raised beds for folks who need a little more accessibility of a raised bed or maybe just don't want as much space. So altogether, we have close to 700 ground plots and raised beds available for folks in Kansas City who maybe want to try it out without tilling up their backyard. We also help folks, if you do want to till up your backyard, for our low-income clients, we have subsidized tilling services. We've worked with the city for a number of years. They've been a great partner in helping us do that. So we can send a tilling contractor out and have your garden set up all ready to go in your backyard for you. Beyond our home garden program, we've also grown. We now support a network of about 270 community partner gardens. And those come in all shapes and sizes. Those may be a local nonprofit who is growing food for their clients. That might be a community center who's using it in their youth programming, communities of faith, neighborhood groups who are renting out plots to their neighbors. But our team will go on site, help folks find a suitable site, make sure their soil's in good shape, make recommendations if it's not, help them design and plan that garden, help them get a water source, which is a lot of times one of the biggest challenges to getting the garden up and running is that water source. And then we also offer all of those sites access to all of our seedlings and seeds and supplies. We also have a network of about 220 school gardens, same concept as the community gardens, only on school grounds, and a team that comes with that provides in-classroom and in-garden education with kids. And then finally, in 2013, we were really proud to be the incubator for the Giving Grove program. They do urban orchards, much in the same way we do urban community gardens. That program has since launched on a national scale, but continues to operate in Kansas City and just planted its 200th orchard in KC this fall. So we've got a thriving network, big or small, there's a place for everyone who wants to get their hands dirty and get started.
Tell me more about the orchards. Is this people growing some fruit trees in their backyard, or you're also looking at larger lots filled with fruit trees?
You know, it started as group sites, but what's kind of unique about our program is that we do what we call little orchards. So if you think of a typical commercial orchard, it's big, it's expansive. You're using a lot of sprays and chemicals to keep that up and running. Our average orchard is 15 trees, or it might be 10 trees and some brambles, some blackberry, raspberry kinds of things. So we scale it down to where it's attainable for community groups. And we are an all natural approach. We do not use chemicals in that, which makes it much more affordable. We've since branched out. We do also offer fruit trees and shrubs for purchase for our home garden members and have some education that goes around that. So you can grow a fruit tree in your backyard if you have space.
Sure. Stan and I have been talking about building home forests for sequestration engines. And, you know, one of the types of home forest is that fruit forest. So, I mean, there's a lot of overlap, not only providing your own fresh, nutritious fruit, but also the wonderful sequestration that plant groupings like that can cause. Stan, what about Missouri Organic? I mean, you guys have been around forever. I mean, what have you seen happening in the urban farming movement here in Kansas City?
Well, I've only been with Missouri Organic for 4 years, but I knew the original founders of Cultivate and moved into the city in 1990 and had a vacant lot to my south of my house that I bought. And so got the experience directly of the toxic levels of trash and junk that would come when, you know, nowadays you have to remove the foundation, haul all the debris that was dumped into the foundation away. That's not the case with a lot of lots sitting around the city. So I've seen that grow. I've seen Cultivate grow, and it's been very exciting. Also, I met the founder of Kansas City Community Gardens a long time ago, and I've watched that since their underground house days on Paseo. Yeah, as far as actually what's been happening is a steady growth, I think. A part of this came from 1984 when the Greater Kansas City Green Party decided we'd like to have a regional food system. We started holding conferences, and then we started holding a food expo for growers to show their work off. And I was involved in that for a long time before I started singing and entertaining for that. So I've kind of seen a lot of it happen, and I'm just thrilled with the school gardens that you guys have. I went to schools doing assemblies for a long period too, talking about composting and healthy food all across Kansas and the Midwest. But Missouri Organic has a good program of donations. So I have something on the website called Sudden Gardens that I started in 2012 before I joined Missouri Organic, which is a tiller and a pickup truck and a load of compost. And I would go out and just do a for-profit tilling operation and get a garden started. I've been lucky enough to go to, probably 70 or 80 backyards personally and talk to people about their plans, what they want to do. And now the Sudden Garden service is basically me going out and looking, just kind of going over their plans with the homeowner, deciding, I'm sorry, you really don't have enough sun. You got to go over here. Many things about it. Kansas City, The yards that I've tested in Kansas City are in the 4 and 5% organic matter, which is considered really pretty good. The problem is the clay, and of course, compost is a great ingredient to break that up, as well as some fungi and inoculants if you can get that in place. But Missouri Organic from the first has been real generous with their donations. We donate about 20,000 cubic yards of compost and mulch every year. And that's soil building as well as fertility. The mulch itself is actually a fairly good way to start on a really rough site, is to put wood chips down and wait for a while or plant through them. But I'm the guy who gets the requests for the donations. So I get to go out and talk to people and facilitate their requests. And I can honestly say I don't think of anything that's been rejected as far as a nonprofit or a church or a community center. We donate to them liberally, and I'm really proud of that.
So a group or individual that's wanting to start a home garden, an urban farm or whatever, you're a resource they can reach out to and kind of come in and do that initial survey of saying, this will work here, this won't work here, just kind of give them some expertise and point them in the right direction.
Yeah. Just for example, one of the big things I was building raised beds, and it's a good idea around here. You can change the soil, but you're going to be at it for a while as far as getting the clay to breathe and loosen up and percolate water. But so raised beds are a popular thing, but you can see a lot of very strange designs on the internet, and people want the garden up in their lap, and my experience personally is that that's a pretty poor idea. First of all, it's expensive to build a container this high and then fill it with 30 inches of dirt. Or the biggest problem that people don't recognize is that when you've got a bed that's that high, it's not in contact with the soil, which mellows the temperature, and the garden can get way too hot in the summertime, especially when it faces directly east or west. It gets a whole half day of baking sun. And soil temperatures above 70, 75 pretty much shut down a lot of activity in the soil. And I have personally fried several tomatoes that should have grown really, really well because we put great soil in there, but they were in a black plastic container that was 18 inches high, just 18 inches high. And I put straw flakes along the sides on the east and the west to keep the sun off of it. The broccoli and greens grew great in the early summer, in the early season. By the middle of the summer, the tomatoes were completely shut down. They never got taller than about this. And so we coach about a 2x10, like a 9.5 inch wide, 4 feet wide. And I like to put a seating rail around it so that people can sit down. I understand arthritis, don't happen to have any, but the point is it's very difficult to build an elevated bed and keep it at a cool temperature.
Sounds like the purpose of your raised beds is just to provide better soil than you might natively
You fill that
in your yard. You fill that with really good, nutritious soil.
Right. And
it's not so much about putting it up in the air so it's easy to work with.
And this is another big thing. God makes soil. There's a lot of biology and interactions that have to take place. We mix ingredients, and we put out something that will become a good soil in 6 months. But people often obviously want to buy something. They want it to grow immediately. We always include a little bit of fertilizer with that because that first crop is going to be sitting in a place where the biology is not yet up to its future abilities. And so we've had a lot of different mixes. Right now, we've got a raised bed garden mix that we like a lot. That's performing really well for people.
So you're something of a home gardener yourself?
Oh, quite a bit. Yeah. I won't say when I started.
You can tell us what you're growing though.
Oh, well, we're growing what we like to eat. And we're doing a very selective, obviously everyone wants those 10 or 15 tomato plants that you can end up with that cannibal surplus for those 3 or 4 weeks in the last of July and 1st of August, where the production is really peaking. And we like to can, 15, 20 quarts of tomatoes. But other than that, we're growing the quantity that my wife and I can really use. We have a 1/4 acre lot with a big house, a house takes up half of it and the front yard takes up a bunch. So our main bed right now is only about, I would say 15 by 40, and it's not square, so it loses some corners. We have currant bushes and blueberries and a nice red raspberry patch, a really good asparagus patch. But my first garden was occluded by 12 years of growth from a big pin oak that suddenly made it to where I had, 1130 to 130, and that's
Just
not
not enough
enough for some
sunlight. Yeah.
of the best crops. So I had to move back about 4 years ago into the very, not the best place for it. It slopes quite a bit, but that's where the sun is.
So it's not really a huge garden space. Do you have a feel for how much of your food is provided by the garden, like a percentage or something?
I'd be afraid to estimate. It's not a giant number, but the thing that we do is Missouri Organics sponsors the Brookside Farmers Market, which is an all organic farmers market. And I'm there every weekend. And when I play a few songs during the entertain for this, they give me $25 worth of chips, and I always come home with some really good organically grown fresh vegetables. But there's a cooperative out of Concordia, Missouri called David's Pasture. That's about 5 or 6 farms out in that area that bring eggs in and deliver door to door. We use them. We've used several. I'm in Lee Summit, so there's a great farmers market in Lee Summit, and this food footprint is way out there. It's 60, 70 miles surrounding Lee Summit. Surrounding Kansas City that people are growing for our market, and we need exactly that and more. That's the food hub is coming together in a great way too. And there's a guy named Tom Philpott who's a writer about our America's food systems, and he has an article right here, interview Tom Philpott on our perilous food system. We're dependent on California and the corn and soybean feedlot mixture in the Midwest, all of which are at the edge of collapse in several ways. And he came to Kansas City, and after a 2-day tour, I said, Tom, who's got more of these pieces in place than Kansas City? He says, I don't know anybody that's got more pieces in place. Some people do some things better than you, but we have it all here. And that's exciting for somebody who was there when we tried to start it.
Let's talk a little bit more about how to become an urban farmer. Mark, I know Cultivate KC was working with Kansas City, Missouri's urban planning department. This was back in like 2010, whatever, to pass new codes that supported urban food production. And, Cultivate KC helped organize that Missouri Food Summit that kind of brought people together and kind of set the platform for people to be able to raise food crops in their yard. So what are the local codes today for urban farming? Can I grow food crops in my front yard?
Oh gosh, I'd have to pull up my codes booklet to really speak to you because they're complicated and every municipality is different. But no, you still are not supposed to grow them in your front yard still. We'd like to get that changed. But
so it's primarily a backyard operation.
Yes, if you're talking about just a residential backyard, now you'll see urban farms going into vacant lots and getting special use permits or variances from the city to grow more extensively across. And it doesn't always fall into only the codes books. There could be HOA rules in certain neighborhoods as well. But I am part of the Greater Kansas City Food Policy Coalition, and we have an urban zoning. I believe Mike's on that as well, with the Urban Zoning Task Force, and we're just right now hoping to put together some best practices for codes and suggestions to have a more unified throughout the city, and greater access and make it even easier for urban ag. That work in 2010 did increase quite a bit. What that initially did was define home garden, sort of community garden, CSA type market garden, and allows a little more leeway in some of those aspects. But a lot of great resources in the city to get started. I mean, just if you're talking about from a beginning grower standpoint, Cultivate did have a Get Growing program once upon a time, and that has developed into the Growing Growers program is administered by K-State, and Cultivate participates in the steering committee, and we run workshops and have apprenticeships associated with that program, where our apprentices will get placed onto a farm for the season and learn the aspects of growing. We hold various educational events throughout the year as well, and the big annual one that Cultivate holds is the Farmers and Friends Conference every February, to really concentrate on the local food scene.
So some good educational resources. Jennifer, what do you find, or what is Kansas City Community Gardens' recommendation to a homeowner in terms of what their codes are, how, what they can put in?
We don't run into that quite as often, just based on the scale that we're putting in. If you're talking a backyard garden, you're generally safe. If you're looking at a vacant lot, that's a big thing to tackle if you're a brand new gardener. So we tend to advise folks to start small, and then we tackle those codes issues as they're getting some more experience.
I do. I mean, just walking around Midtown and stuff, I am seeing raised beds in front yards. I mean, just a few blocks up from me, there's this gorgeous home garden that takes it's a corner lot. And he's taken the entire side of his lot with just, all kinds, peppers, tomatoes, corn. So I do see that happening. And, you always wonder, now, is he supposed to do this, or is he just doing it and getting away with it?
I'd say it's more about if you do it well, it looks good. And,
At what point does crops become landscaping? Because it's a beautiful yard. Right. He's got pathways going through it. And, you could argue that that's just his flower beds. He just happens to be growing food crops as his landscaping.
It's a great concept called edible landscaping that no one should complain about, right? Front yard stuff gets into, it's really about field crops. They're trying to think, they don't want to see a couple rows of corn in your front yard or so.
Sure.
Well, Kansas City's had a strong food, not lawns program for a long time too, especially Sam Mann up north. Steve Mann has been doing that for a long time. And, it's a great idea.
Mike, I know you grow on some urban lots. I mean, what's your experience with coding, and what kind of permits and stuff have you had to get, if any?
Yeah, not so much permitting. So this is the deal on that. It's I think when you're growing on an urban lot, you have so the code will not necessarily like really worried about coding, because we try to keep it neat, clean, and try to keep the lines right. I think especially growing like on vacant lots in between other people's property, you have even more of a responsibility to like always make sure, like my lots, I always make sure the grass is never not cut. You always make sure that stuff is picked up and trash is picked up. And it's not really about growing, growing corn may not be bad, but it's just like you have to think about that in your design. So I think if it's really well done, then it'll be that people in the community will consider it a benefit, But in the heat, a garden can be really hard to tackle at times, especially like in the middle of the summer. And it can vary like grapes, and just it can even roses. It can get out of control really fast, and it can turn into what was once a beautiful space. It can turn into an eyesore. And so I think you just have to be conscious when you're, especially when you're not living in that community, because you may not see it like every day, you know, you may not have to see it. So I think you just have to just keep an eye on it and just try to remember that you just keep your form simple. So maybe you're only growing 1 or 2 drains, maybe you got a couple patches of mint. But as long as you keep it, simple, I think you won't have a problem.
Sounds like
And I
basically
should
a
say
good,
that,
good neighbor policy.
Sorry.
Go ahead, Mark.
Oh, I should say that Cultivate, we do have an extensive file that lists every code for the 9 municipalities or 9 county region here. And I'm able to provide that to folks if need be as well, but it will be posted on our website. We took it off to make some updates to it here currently, but you can go on there and you can see the codes that pertain to urban ag in your area.
That's a good resource. And I was saying, it sounds like it's a basic good neighbor policy. I mean, you maintain your property, you keep it attractive, as we all should for our yards. That way your neighbors have nothing to complain about.
Yeah, and you just have to make sure it fits. Make sure your design, make sure what you want to do may not be like growing a whole plot of corn, maybe what you want to do, but you have to think about your neighbors and kind of how that's going to look and how it kind of fits in. So I think that's really the most important thing. And actually, if you do it well, you know, like what we've done, you know, the neighbors will come over and they'll help you and they'll talk to you and they'll buy stuff from you, you know. And so keeping a relationship with the neighbors is important. If you live in the community, or even if you don't live in the community. I have a couple of people I have a guy an employee who was doing some contract work. And one of the guys who lives around the corner stopped, hey, because he was fiddling with the door. Hey, what are you doing there? You know, so that's what you want. You want to reach out to your neighbors and talk to them, build a relationship, so they can be, so they can be behind you and keep an eye out on your property. And then just, if something's not working, they'll tell you. If something isn't working, they'll tell you.
The city of Springfield, actually not officially the city, but in Springfield, there's an organization called the Good Well-Fed Neighbor Program. And for community building, but also maybe a little bit of security, to have somebody who will watch your house, they advocate, a bag of groceries to every house you can see. I'm on the corner, so I've got about 7 houses that get bags of surpluses throughout the year. Not very often, unfortunately, but they know that there's a big garden over here, and it's to my benefit to keep it safe and secure and all those other things. So has a little survivalist tinge to it, but the idea is a good thing, really. Build community and get people looking out for you.
I think a garden, I mean, whether it's your home garden or a lot or a community garden, I would think that would bring community together.
Oh, yeah. It's a good factor. I wanted to talk about getting started, Bob.
Yeah, let's do that.
The jury is kind of in as far as tilling, and given the fact that we have clay, if I were to start a garden, I might still till it, but only once, and I would make sure I put a lot of compost as deep as I could. But when we break up the soil, we break down the aggregates and make them available to bacteria, which causes a huge release of the carbon in the soil. So even if you put compost in, it's said that it may be just breaking even with the organic matter in the soil. And so people are headed for a sheet of cardboard over your garden with 3 inches of compost on that, and then cutting a hole for your tomatoes and digging them in a little bit. But planting in the compost on top of the cardboard, and it works. And next year, the worms and the biology have destroyed that barrier, and all of a sudden there's soil where there wasn't any. And
so the cardboard's purpose is to prepare the soil underneath it. So that first year you're just kind of using that for a barrier, and then
just to kill the grass, basically, because once that grass gets in the dark and in the damp, it decomposes pretty quickly. And then that's provided a lot of excess organic matter to feed the worms and bring them to the surface and get this whole thing going. The cardboard can't take that condition very long. soon you've got, I'd started in the fall before if I were really serious about it, but it does work. And I make that available to everybody to know if they're not building a raised bed, which I prefer in this area. And you want to get started on a shoestring, I think that's a good possibility.
So it sounds like, I mean, if I want to become an urban farmer, the first consideration is location and soil. And I'm hearing all of you have classes and resources to help a person figure that out, maybe a consultation or some online videos and stuff you can watch and learn, what your options are. So that kind of gets you started, and then prepping the soil, and then turning to Jennifer's group or various places to get your seeds, your plants and such. What is the best source for seeds in the metro area? Do we have a seed bank in Kansas City? Non-GMO, good organic type seeds that we'd want to grow? Mark, where do you get your seeds?
So I tend to get my seeds from a couple sources. I wouldn't say Kansas City has a seed bank necessarily, but there are several things like seed exchanges that people do, or plant exchanges that get facilitated, and a lot of just general seed sharing from that way. Personally, I often will looking for specific varieties, and I may be ordering them from a place like Johnny's Seed or Baker Creek heirloom seeds, and locally often we'll pick up seeds at Planters Seed and Spice in the River Market.
Mike, where do you pull your seeds?
Yeah, lately we've having to do a lot more buying seeds online, because like limits on seeds. Like I just bought 5 pounds of dill the other day, and here really people aren't really letting you. There's a shortage, so they're trying to make it fair for everyone. But then again, you still have stuff as a farmer you need to plant. So I really like I've really loved over the years Planter Seed Store. They have you can buy seed in bulk. One of the great places that in Kansas City that you can do that. And they also have packeted seeds. Rollen Nursery has some great seed selection. Kansas City Community Gardens has a great seed selection for. They have a beanstalk selection, so they have some really great selection of seeds that you can plant in a garden for children. So that's like the top of my list. And then what I love about them is the variety of the seeds are tested, and it's going to grow well for the area. And so they have a list on their website. MU has a recommended list variety, and so if it's not on that list, really, I don't grow it because you're going to grow it and you're going to be dissatisfied with it. And so I look at their list, and then look at University of Missouri list of recommended varieties. And then just talk to people at the different community gardens. Hey, what are you growing? Oh, I'm growing Provider. Oh yeah. What corn are you growing? I'm growing Bodacious and Peaches and Cream. That's it. That's all I'm going to grow, because that's what everybody grows around here. And so after a couple of years, you get it. So I just kind of sort of felt my way to greatness, by just like doing it wrong for so many years. And then I just got the epiphany, you know what? Let's just reach out to Cultivate, reach out to Kansas City Community Gardens, reach out to some people who have been doing it longer than I have, and they've been a great resource. So real quick, I just wanted to mention, as far as I totally agree with what Stan said about compost, and that's really how we do the urban gardens, and have watched people build out the urban gardens. A lot of people, they'll get the compost and they'll till it in, and I've never done that. Well, I did it on Vine because I had to, but usually if there's no contaminants or anything in the soil, you want to till it and plow it and get all the brick and glass, aluminum, just stuff buried out of there. And then you get a good compost, like a Missouri Organics, fungally dominated compost, excellent compost. And I don't even put the cardboard down. We just do 30-inch rows and just do it really thick, like maybe a foot. And we plant into that, the seedlings into that, and it's the spacing is, I don't know, maybe a foot. So if it's maybe kale, so it's 10 inches, 12 inches spacing in the row. And if there's any grass, it's going to get a jump start. The canopy is going to shade all that out. And so that's always worked for us. If it's the only reason I put on the back end of my property, I have a really invasive vine. And so last year we covered that with cardboard, and it killed like 90% of it off. A lot of people do. If I had that amount of cardboard, I probably would have, done it like that, put the cardboard down if I had access to that amount of cardboard. So that is a great way to do it. But if you do it like put the compost down really thick and then stay on top of it, maybe use the cardboard for the aisles, it's the best way to go. And their compost is weed free, and that's what you want. So
It's cooked hot and long.
yeah.
No weed survives.
Yeah.
Jennifer, I know you provide seeds and saplings. Where do you source yours? Are you propagating your own seed, or?
A little bit of both, actually. So for our main seed line, we carry 2 seed lines. We carry kind of our classic KCCG line seeds, which are just those staple crops. And we source those from a lot of the folks that Mark mentioned, Johnny's and some of those big vendors. We order them in bulk and then have a team of volunteers, most of whom are gardeners, who rent plots out here at our office that come in over the winter and hand package all of those. So it allows us to offer them at very, very low cost. And over our 40-year history, that catalog has really been derived from what works best in Kansas City. We've listened to a lot of gardeners. Folks have been doing this for decades. Our selections are designed to be as disease and pest resistant as they can be naturally. So maybe something that ripens a little earlier before the wave of pests hits for the year, that kind of thing. There's great descriptions of all of those up on our website, why we chose them, when to plant them, a lot of resources for beginning gardeners. And then our beanstalk seed line that Mike mentioned are all seeds that are grown, or all varieties that are grown here in our Beanstalk Children's Garden. So lots of really fun, colorful stuff. I've got rainbow carrots and Easter egg radishes going at home for my kids. So lots of really fun things. We do propagate a few of those ourselves. We've got some things like the sensitive plant that really are not as much about food as they are about fun in the backyard. But those are really fun for families. And again, designed to be pretty resilient, easy to grow things, so you have some success the first year out.
That's very cool.
I say, Bob, beyond seeds, there are some great transplant sales that go on in the city every year. And KCCG has a big transplant sale. The farm school at Gibbs Road has a big transplant sale every year. You can do, online ordering and then curbside pickup too, and so a lot of those. As beyond that, we offer bulk ordering, so we will organize with groups of farmers to get better prices on bulk deliveries, such as seed potatoes, fertilizer, strawberries, garlic, and onions, things that you need to get in, but paying as an individual, like smaller amount, and the shipping costs associated with that. When you aggregate together, you get much better prices.
So great resources you're all offering. Is there support groups, maybe not the right word, but Mike, you were talking about talking to other farmers and such. I mean, are there organized gatherings? Where do the farmers go to exchange information? Anyone?
Yeah. So real quick, I think that just all of these organizations have like events or places that they may be at setting up a table or whatnot. There are groups like Young Farmers, National Young Farmers, and in Black Urban Farmers and Growers. There are other groups and stuff you can join, but I think that you just have to have the passion to be able to get out and speak with people and just find. I mean, for me, it was renting plots in different community gardens or going to different community gardens and then just talking to the people. Or going to Kansas City Community Gardens. Like I went up there when I was first getting started, I went up there every day at noon when I got off. They got in every day. I made sure to ask at least one or two questions. And after a while they were running from me, but I learned so much, and so yeah. And people in Kansas City are so willing to share what they know. I'm like, hey, Ernie, why are you healing up those collards like that? And then, say, hey, can I record you doing that? And so you just learn so much from other people, and that's the best way. There's only so much that you can get out of a book. And I've seen people, the book will say one way in like planting corn in one of the community gardens at Ivanhoe Richardson. Some people are like, I don't plant corn in Kansas City, it can't be done. And like, if you go to that garden, you will see people who have patches of corn and the ears are ridiculous, you know, and that's what you have to be involved in the community. That's what you have to get out and talk to people, you know, talk to the reverend or you know, the different people who are in the community running these garden plots. And that's really how you learn. That's how I learned.
Very cool. Jennifer, if I'm just getting started, let's talk a little bit about the community garden plot versus the home garden. Is one more appropriate, or does it just depend on the person?
You know, I think Mike just shared the greatest benefit of community gardening is that you have 20 people doing it along with you, and you have people who have decades of experience. It's also kind of a zero commitment game. If you want to rent a bed or a plot for a year and decide it's not for you, you haven't torn up your backyard and put a lot of investment into raised beds or smothered your grass and started a ground plot. So it's an easy way to try it out and see what you think.
So it sounds like a good test. You know, if you're wanting to see how it goes, try that community plot for a while and then move to your backyard.
Right.
Or front yard.
It's a great test, and I'll add, because every garden the soil is different. And so I've learned so much, because what the soil is like on one garden, it's going to be totally different in another garden. And so learning that just makes you stronger. That's really important too.
Along with all these crops you're raising, there's also the idea of livestock. I don't know if you've been hearing this rooster next to me here going off, but I'm seeing more and more chickens in an urban setting. What's your experience with that? Are people starting to raise chickens for the eggs or whatever?
There's quite a few people raise chickens in the city. There is some even hogs. There's some goats as well, and eggs and broiler chickens both. There's limits to the number that you have, and you know, you get back into the zone and the coding of how far away from the property line it needs to be, or how far from your house the coop has to be. But it's definitely allowed.
It is allowed. So I mean, there's a good source of, like, say, eggs and meat, help supplement your diet there. So what's the best option if I've been an urban farmer for a while, I've got that garden, and maybe I want to grow, maybe I want to do something like Ophelia's and, you know, expand into a more commercial, if I want to start selling at a farmer's market or maybe selling to restaurants. Can you give us some advice along those lines? Mike, I think you'd be a great person to start on that.
Yeah, and I'll keep it brief. I think really not so much about making the jump to commercial is not so much about money. Although it does require some stuff. You'll have some insurance, you'll have to need a vehicle, maybe an employee or two. I think you have to be willing, you have to just go ahead and take that leap. But also the connection is really important. So getting out and talking to people from different organizations is what helps. This is what's going to help tremendously with that.
Mark, a lot of your people are obviously professional farmers, but a lot of them start as home gardeners and work their way up from there.
Oh, a lot of the people that I've worked with over the years have been coming out of the Growing Growers program, or graduates from the New Roots program, or established sort of farmers in the city. Yeah, I think a lot of people you would talk to, you would hear that they started as, you know, growing their own food, either growing up or got into it at some point in the backyard and wanting to expand. And then it does come down into, I guess, so it's land access could be where you grow. The land bank is a little less willing to support agriculture these days, it seems like. And then it comes down into water access, though I know farmers that have successfully done it without water access on site and are able to grow without irrigation or so. It's definitely a much harder thing. So if you think about in the city, having a water tap put onto a property that no longer, I mean, you could be looking at $7,000 to $12,000 on the Missouri side, up towards of $20,000 on the Kansas side. So there's definitely some infrastructure build out things the Kansas City, Missouri Water Department has actually had a water access grant program that KCCG administers, and would go out and do water audits on plots to then have them apply for a grant for water access. And it's been really the ability to turn into a farm business. Some of those initial infrastructure developments are very important.
It's good information to know. So thank you. I appreciate everything that you've taught us today. This is a wonderful subject. So where can we learn more about your group? Mark, where do we go to learn more about Cultivate KC?
Yes, cultivatekc.org.
Very good. And Mike, where can we go to learn about Ophelia's Blue Vine Farm? You're muted, Mike.
Ophelia'sBlueVine.com or Ophelia'sBlueVineFarm.com. We have some videos that tell our story, and we have all of our hours listed. You can order, pick up, or delivery, and volunteer hours Saturday and Sunday from 10 to 1. Love to have you out to the farm so you can really see kind of what we're doing for yourself. A lot of the comments, like within the last couple of weeks, we've gotten people have come in and just been amazed, and that was the intention when I started out Ophelia's Blue Vine Farm.
Well, thank you. Stan, where do we go to learn about Missouri Organic Recycling?
MissouriOrganic.com. Sudden Gardens is one of the big choices you'll have, and of course, all the products.
Jennifer, Kansas City Community Gardens.
We are at kccg.org. We've got the full catalog of all of the seeds, plants, and supplies we offer, along with all of our resource library for starting gardeners.
This is the Climate Hour. I'm your host, Bob Grove.